And in this episode of Victim to Victor, we're joined by Bree Anderson, an intuitive healer, trauma-informed practitioner, and the founder of Healing with Bree. With a profound ability to blend spiritual wisdom and evidence-based practices, Bree creates transformative healing spaces where individuals can reconnect with their authentic selves and find empowerment after trauma. Through her compassionate approach, Bree integrates modalities such as somatic healing, guided meditations, breath work, and energy work to help clients release stored emotional pain and achieve lasting transformation. Her mission is rooted in the belief that healing is a sacred and individualized journey, a path that requires both safety and intentional guidance. So, welcome to the show, Bree. Such an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Wow. So, Brie, it'll be great for you to start off to share a bit about your journey and what led you to the amazing work that you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born with a abnormality, shall we say. Both of my hips were dislocated when I was born, and the my pediatrician didn't catch it. There's a very standard protocol that they do for all babies when they're born to check like their fingers and toes, and they have a protocol to check for their hips. And I passed the protocol, but my hips were dislocated. I started walking and I walked a little funny, but my pediatrician thought it was my back and not my actual hips. He never sent me to an X-ray technician or radiologist to see what was going on. Um, anyway, at 3.5, after I'd been walking for 2.5 years, it was finally discovered. And your hips, there's a socket where the leg bone goes into. And when you're born, it's actually flat. And so when you start walking, it becomes round and becomes a socket. I didn't have the acetabulum. I didn't have the socket formed. So when they went in to do surgery, it's pretty graphic, but they actually, they have to crack the hip. They don't just strap you down and drug you. They have to cut into you. They have to crack the pelvis. They saw the bone, like they have to drill the bone back in. Like it's pretty intense. And I had 10 of those surgeries from 3.5 to 11. So that period of time, I spent almost 6 years in a full body cast. And um, yeah, it was a really hard and challenging time. But normally, I think because I was so far developed and because it was just so traumatizing for my body, it my bones didn't take. So they had to keep doing the surgery over and over and over again. They were hoping to just do two surgeries, but I ended up having six on my right leg and four on my left leg. Um, at the end of that, I went into my teenage years where I couldn't walk. I walked funny. I mean, I could walk, but I walked very, very, people are like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's wrong with your leg? What's wrong with your foot? My ankle couldn't hit the ground. So it definitely affected not just my body, but how I felt about myself, and how the world around me saw me. And so it was hard for me to have a strong sense of self when the world around me was looking at me like I was crippled and treating me as if I was that way. So I had massive amounts of shame. I had depression, had a lot of social anxiety. And there was like just a complete like inability to see who I really was and to be rooted and anchored in myself. My teenage years were hard. High school was even hard. I mean, there weren't any boys that found me attractive. I mean, a few, but I didn't know about it. So, like you go through these developmental stages, and I already had massive amounts of trauma that shaped and infiltrated each of these stages too. So it's hard to, you know, you're supposed to like blossom and grow like a plant. There's a natural design and rhythm. And when it gets interrupted so young, it taints all of those other stages. And so, like a rebellious human that I am, I started partying and got into drugs and, because those make you feel good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I I had my daughter at 19, and she's the light of my life, like the most amazing thing that could have ever happened to me. And she, that reset me on my path because of the values that I hold. So I started my healing journey. And I started going to therapy. And actually, that's not true. My parents divorced when I was um, my last surgery. My parents split up 2 months after my last surgery, which was like intense. I have all that and then like this gnarly divorce going on. I skipped through that part, but um, so if I can just circle back to where I was. So basically, I chose, I didn't want my daughter, I didn't want to hand down all of my issues to my daughter. So I really focused on, um, you know, a career and something that I was passionate about. And I started healing. And so how my journey, I started in therapy at 13. I went back to therapy when I was 18, 19. And then I loved psychology. I loved talk therapy, but it wasn't creating the type of change that I knew I could have. It's interesting when you go through trauma and you come out the other side and you're like irrevocably different. It's like you have, and you don't know how to get back to who you were or who you are, like your birthright, like who you're supposed to be. So I knew through all of my surgeries that it had changed me, but I didn't know how exactly. And I didn't know how to find my way back. But I'm a fighter. Very much so. And if I believe something's possible, I will make it happen. And that's how I got here, really. It's that part of my spirit that is, stubborn and unwilling to believe that I'll never walk normally, like the doctors told me. I'm proud to say that I don't walk completely normally, but for the most part, people don't ask me anymore. They don't recognize until they see me in a bathing suit and they're like, wow, what are all those scars,
Oh,
So, yeah. So anyway, talk therapy didn't quite um,
cut it.
create a lot of change for me. It helped my perception around things. It helped me see things a little bit more expansively. That was helpful. So I went searching and I started with energy healing and soul healing. And I think a lot of people who have trauma, especially a lot of people who have anxiety, start there because the way that anxiety as a trauma symptom affects people, that unsettled shakiness, it feels very energetic. So a lot of people start with energy healing. And so I went, I did like past life healing and karmic releases. And I actually started to feel lighter and feel more at peace. So I enrolled in a 4-year energy healing school. And it was, it helped me resolve a lot of anger. Because I was angry from the divorce, and I was very angry with any type of trauma that has an attack to it or an assault. or like a restrained attack, which, is obviously physical assault or any type of sexual trauma or medical trauma, there's massive amounts of anger and rage actually that's trapped inside the body. And so energy healing helped me work through that more. And then I also went to school for psychology during that time because I'm very psychologically oriented. I'm very practical. I felt like I couldn't just do like something that was like airy fairy work. Like I needed to have some kind of like merging between the two. And so I opened my private practice in 2009 and did really amazing, like beautiful work, really helped people. And I started to see that there was like a glass ceiling and I could only help people so far. And then along the process of my healing, because healing happens in cycles and it happens in layers. And so tend to work on like the outer layer, like an onion, right? We tend to work on outer layers as we work our way into like the core and the deeper themes. And so I was really working on like a lot of family issues at first and identity issues and my relationship to my body during that period of time. And then, I started noticing that like there were still issues and patterns in my life that I couldn't get through. And vulnerably, I'll share one of those, like the main thing that kind of led me towards trauma healing is that I started realizing, like, in my sexual experiences, I was a little bit of the common denominator where I would kind of go into a little bit of like a freeze and I wasn't dissociating. And I didn't have like massive sexual trauma that would equate to why I kind of showed up in a way where I wasn't really able to participate and I didn't have my voice and I wasn't able to ask for what I wanted or be directive or, say like, yeah, that's not working for me. Like I didn't have the agency to be able to do that. And in fact, it was like my brain just totally like it was like I couldn't even access words. So I started, I tried seeing different sex therapists and nobody could tell me what was going on, but just common, and it's unfortunate for people on their healing journey because a lot of people stop at that point in time. They don't keep going. And so I ended up enrolling in a tantric program. And that was really beautiful and really healing in some ways and incredibly traumatizing at the same time. So it was like a really interesting experience. Yeah, yeah. They wanted you to do like all these pleasure practices, like 5 days a week and this and that. And like it's like I had to do it. It was another rendition of like I had to have another surgery, right? So I kind of became like this perpetrator to myself. And so, anyway, through that, I found somatic experiencing and um, I got to the heart of what was going on. And I realized that my surgeries, because I was laying down, because I was put unconscious, right? And somebody's over me, like cutting into my hips, that for my body would get triggered in sexual experiences. And so then I would revert back to kind of being like I was out of it from my surgeries. So a lot of conditions can activate the trauma.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize that that's what was happening until I got into somatic experiencing. And so from there, I studied, four other forms of body-based healing and somatic healing. And now that's what I get to do is I get to help people to work through their own trauma and, become more anchored in their body and resolve the things that are keeping them stuck at different consciousnesses or different periods of time. And it's Uh, it's beautiful, and I'm very honored that I get to do that. So,
Amazing. Wow, what a story. And it's the first that I've heard about surgery actually, being a trigger factor for trauma. I just think that's so fascinating. Uh,
yeah, yeah. Do you have
yeah,
any specific questions? I'm
yeah.
quite an expert on
Yeah.
it.
No, so because yeah, it's very interesting because obviously, you have the surgeries which like medical surgeries which have to take place due to any, conditions that someone may be struggling. But then you also have cosmetic surgery. So do you feel there's a difference in that?
Absolutely. Great question. So, first off, just as a precursor to your question, um, uh, as we form, right, as our body develops, our brain isn't fully developed until we're 23. And out from our brain comes our spinal cord and all of our nerves, right? So our body is our brain essentially, right? Our brain is our body. And so the younger somebody experiences trauma, the more disruptive it's going to be for their development. So if you have a surgery at 3, or some babies are born with a cleft lip and a cleft palate, they have surgeries right away, right? They have it the first before they're 1, and then they have developmental surgeries, sometimes 7, 11, 12, for cosmetic, for to recreate the lip and stuff like that. Um, so yes, they're different. And so if you have a surgery when you're little, or you get into an accident and you have to have a surgery and you're 35, let's say, there's a difference between an elective surgery where somebody has had the time. So cosmetic surgeries, oftentimes people are um, dealing with something visual about their body that they either don't like, right? Because like my cousin, she had ears that like really stuck out, right? So she grew up with that, and she was made fun of a lot. And so she had her relationship to her ears that she wanted to correct. And so, you think of cosmetic surgery and you always think of women older dealing with aging and this and that. And that is, a big portion, but there's a lot of reasons. And so people who elect to have cosmetic surgery have gone through a process to choose it. Other people who like have cancer, right? Or, some type of issue going on with their body, sometimes the most traumatizing thing in the entire experience is getting the news of the diagnosis. So, medical, surgical, procedural trauma, right? Because not all this category can just be more minor procedures, but they can still um, be traumatizing to the system, and the person can have like anxiety after, or like a weird breathing problem, right? And they might not have full-blown trauma symptoms, but there's so many moments along the entire journey, from either the diagnosis or grieving what's happening with the body, right, to choosing to do the surgery or having to have the surgery because of an accident, and so on and so forth. So it's actually the most complex trauma category in all of the trauma categories. So hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so you use a lot of different modalities such as somatic practices, breath work, and energy work. Can you explain how these all help to release stored trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I will say I am very much more, let's see, how do I answer that question? I very much am doing primarily somatic based work as a whole. right? But in certain moments, I will bring in aspects of breath work or aspects of energy healing, or a very specific way to meditate to support what's happening with the client's mind and their physiology to either help them feel safe in the moment, right? Or to help them metabolize or like go in and focus on an emotion, right? So, like with trauma, there's a lot of fear. And I would arguably say that fear is probably the most uncomfortable emotion for a human to be with. And so it's important, though, for in trauma resolution work to feel what is trapped inside the body, because when we can feel it, then it metabolizes. And so I will use, um, breath work, or I'll use meditations, and, people's how they use their awareness with their mind to allow them to process something. So for instance, I have a client and she has a gnarly past and history, which I won't go into, but she has a really hard time feeling the sensations in her body because it scares her, right? Because the amount of trauma that she had, she doesn't want to feel the sensations, and she doesn't really like to feel the emotions either. She likes to kind of she's dissociated a lot of the time. And so, in order to help her become more embodied and to move through the trauma, she has to make contact with the experiences and allow them, her body to process them. And then once they process them, she'll be more in her body, which she has made really good progress. But one of the things, as an example, is to feel the fear, right? When the fear arises, I have her split her attention, right? So she feels the fear, but then she also like focuses something outside of herself,
Mhm.
like a shell in the room or something. And so that way I'm expanding her capacity to be with something that's challenging. And then it becomes easier and easier. And as it becomes easier, she has less fear. And then she can be more in her body. So that's how I will use, breath work, or, you know,
Beautiful.
meditation, or, some of the other things that I learned in the first season of my career. So
Amazing. Yes, I love that. And I love, Hannah, how you said it's a gradual process because, yeah, it's a huge deal that coming back into the body. And
totally.
yeah, and safety is a paramount, safety and stabilization.
Hmm, hmm.
But what I also love is, how you are emphasizing the importance of a community as well. And I guess that's where the gathering comes into play as well. So,
Yes,
um,
yes.
so how did that actually come about, and how does actually being part of a healing community amplify personal growth and transformation?
You know, I love this question. And so I created the gathering several years ago. And I created it mainly because in my experience healing, some of my um, some of my very profound experiences were in group dynamics. And I required them for my healing because the wounding happened in group setting, right? Like some of my big wounding was that the world around me looked at me like I was, a monster or a cripple, or, the ugly girl. Like I was the cripple girl at school, So it was imperative for me to have other experiences where the group actually saw who I was, or held me and loved me, or reflected back to me things that I wasn't able to see in myself. So I created the gathering because that group aspect is was so important for me, and I see it being needed and necessary for other people, especially since one of the trauma symptoms is isolation, and so people will isolate. And oftentimes there's a, especially for complex PTSD, or developmental trauma that happens in childhood, there's a distorted identity and a distorted view of oneself. So, yeah, so the group is, it's about being able to show up and be who you are and learn very specific practices for, and this is a woman's group, right? So this is very specific practices for women and in their femininity and in repairing their relationship to other women, because there's a lot of wounding, women have wounding with women and wounding with men. So this targets wounding with women. Yeah, but it's been a really lovely, beautiful thing that I get to walk other women through. And they've had very profound healing experiences that I could never facilitate with them, So it's something about the power of the group.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah, there's something in that community feel. It makes a huge difference. Wow.
hmm.
Yeah, you're right. And again, we've all been there where we feel that we can't trust anybody, and so we just go within, and we're too scared to ask for help as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's all down to trusting in yourself and trusting in others. So just having that safe environment where everybody has something in common, and it just, again, you can really understand each other and
Mhm.
start to regain that trust again.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So for those who may be currently trying to confront their emotional pain, like, do you have any advice for my listeners right now?
I always have advice. Just like ran through a little Rolodex in my head. And emotional pain is it's so broad, right? Like how do I answer that question in a way that can meet people, right? Um, I think that, like, if I'm gonna come up with something very general, I think that when people have hope, they that is like the most necessary and needed ingredient in healing. And so I would offer for people to really examine what can inspire or create hope inside of them, that they can hold on to that, or they can move from that space. So maybe for some people, talking to somebody actually can help them foster and create hope. But for others, it can make them feel defeated, right? Because a lot of people don't know how to connect with others in trauma, right? So I think wherever somebody can find hope, they can have the ability to, like, that'll create something inside of them that they can, you know, make choices from, or I don't know how to put words into it, but when there's hope, there's the ability not to fall into and be kind of pulled into the undertow of the pain. And so if you can balance out the pain with something positive, that for people with hope that doesn't resonate, but if you're emotionally in pain or you're emotionally suffering in this moment, right? Like if you're listening right now in this moment, what is the most pleasant thing in your experience, right? Is that the way that you're sitting? Is that the view outside your window? Is it like a sparkly crystal that's in your house? You know, what's the most pleasant thing that you can focus on? Because what we focus on, it's where our attention goes, and it's what we actually get to experience and be in that moment. So if you can focus more on what is pleasant, what's positive, what feels good, it'll take you out of the pain and out of the suffering. And the
Mm,
more that you can focus on that, the more you will go in that direction.
beautiful. Wow, what a beautiful answer. Thank you.
You.
I love that.
Mhm.
And again, hope. Yes, it applies to everybody. We all need to live in hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
also, I'd link to that, which is going to be my next question, is about spiritual healing as well. For those clients who may be wanting to cultivate a deeper spiritual connection during their healing journey, are there any practices that you'd recommend for that?
I always kind of like get a little nervous with this question.
Really?
I don't know why. I guess I feel like the soul or the spirit is it's just more personal, you know? It's like the depths of who we are, like the core of who we are. And I think sometimes people can confuse spiritual healing with like a religion or a higher power, because there's a lot of wounding with a higher power, right? And with God. And spirit can be like our inner self. Um, so depending on how somebody, their lens with that question, um, honestly, I feel like just slowing down and being still with oneself, whether it's meditating or journaling. I think that is a very, very, very powerful thing. And a lot of people avoid it. A lot of people roll their eyes. I don't have time. I don't like it. I don't know how.
True.
And I I understand because you tend to make contact when you slow down, you tend to make contact with things that you feel inside of you that aren't pleasant, and that are painful and that people avoid in this fast-paced, scrolling life that we have. But I would recommend for people to put on a timer, take a few minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and just sit and be in silence
Mm.
or journal the thoughts that you're having, or the hopes and desires that you want. So that's what I would recommend for a practice to do on your own that doesn't require you to, spend money or download something or.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's the simple things in life, which are so important. And you're right, we lose track of that. We're just so busy doing that we forget to be. Just
Yeah.
be with yourself. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
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 Thank you. So, I just want to ask about boundaries as well. So, because we know boundaries are very important for
Mhm.
everybody. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you have specifically for survivors who struggle with setting healthy boundaries in their life?
Do boundary repair work.
Wow. Okay.
I
Does that
mean,
consist
like
of?
just straight up, like, so boundaries, there's different forms of boundaries, right? There's like boundaries with my body. There's like boundaries with my physical space or with my things, right? Like when people get a new car, like don't touch my new car, like they got a boundary with don't bring food in my new car, right? Like they got a boundary with that.
Yeah.
And then there's like, intellectual, mental boundaries, emotional, spiritual, sexual boundaries for sure. But when we have certain types of traumas, boundaries get ruptured, especially if they are, um, there's all boundaries get ruptured in trauma. I don't even need to say especially, but just know that if you've had massive amounts of trauma or just even a little bit of trauma, you've had some boundary ruptures. Um, I had horrible boundary ruptures. I mean, I was strapped down to a table, knocked out, and cut into over and over again. I mean, that's a huge boundary rupture. And I had horrible boundaries. And as much as I studied psychology and as much as I, read about it, I could not find the agency to put up better boundaries. I was able to with my daughter as a mom, but I didn't have any wounding with that. It was hard to at first, but with so many other things in my life, required me to do boundary repair work. And it's different than what you would do with a talk therapist, because the boundaries are like you can't talk your way out of everything. When trauma gets activated inside of you, you can't talk your way out of it. So you can do really powerful boundary repair work with a somatic experiencing practitioner. Um, you can, I think it's on healingtrauma.org. I don't know. If you Google somatic experiencing practitioner directory, you can find somebody in your area. And that was hands down like the light switch that turned the boundaries on and off in my world. And I see it happen for other people, and they have a hard time putting up boundaries until they do boundary repair work. So, just to be super frank and practical, that's my answer. Boundary repair work with a
Wow.
somatic experiencing practitioner.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic. I love that. Yeah, because you get emotional and you get energetic boundaries as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's not just everything that we see. It's a lot of it is, I guess it boils down to, what we think about ourselves, if we value ourselves and, if we respect and love ourselves, then ultimately, we're not going to want anyone to ever jeopardize that. So, put your
Right,
boundaries in
right.
place. Don't let anybody ever disturb your inner peace.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's hard when there's been trauma because usually what's happening is that what's happening on the inside, the person's not able to have that beat happen on the outside. And so they're not able to assert boundaries, or they say yes when they mean to say no, right? Or they say no when they really want to say yes. And so that lack of congruency uh, is it's so painful. Like it's so painful to live with that because then there's this shame and like self beat up that happens after when you're not able to put up boundaries. And so and you're the common denominator, like people know that about themselves and they hate it. So anyway, but yeah, it's so important because life doesn't really change a whole lot, or at least it didn't for me until I was able to put up boundaries. I felt emotionally lighter, I felt less angry, but in certain dynamics, they would keep repeating themselves, which is how I got into trauma healing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. So, what's your vision now for healing with Bree and the future?
Well, I created an online program. It's called Ascend at this moment. I might change it in the next couple weeks, but I'm launching it in March of 2025, depending on whenever you're listening to this podcast. And so I'm really, really excited. It is a 12-week program and it's oriented at, resolving trauma, but it's very body-based trauma and it's helping people who have what I call a lot of body trauma. So they've had, attacks or not even, but they could have had a lot of emotional trauma younger in their life, but now their body is experiencing other symptoms or they have chronic pain. So it actually targets chronic pain, which is a hard trauma symptom to address. So anyway, I'm super excited about that, and I'm launching that in the near future. And yeah,
Amazing.
that is what's happening in my little world, and where I get to take the things that were most transformative for me and offer them in a way that I know will be remarkable and life-changing. So
Valuable, very valuable. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And so, where can my listeners find you?
they can find me online at my website. It's healingwithbree.com.
Mhm.
And I'm on Instagram every now and then, not all the time, but the handle's at Healing with Bree. So those are
Yeah,
probably the two main places.
beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's been so amazing having you on. You're just such a nurturing soul. Wow.
Thank you. It was lovely to be here. So appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And just some very valuable insights. And I hope that, wow, I wish you all the best for the future. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please do reach out to myself or Brie if you have any questions about anything that we've discussed today. We always love to hear from you. And that's all we have time for today, my beautiful people. And we look forward to seeing you on the next show. Stay blessed.